Okay, hope you're having a good week, good day so far. Happy Hanukkah, everyone. We're going to learn a Rashi from the second Aliyah today, since it is Monday. We're talking about Paro's dreams and Yosef's ability to interpret Paro's dreams. The pasuk tells us, "Vayomer Paro el Yosef, Chalom chalamti, ufoter ein oto." Paro says to Yosef, "I've dreamed a dream, and it cannot be solved. No one in my team, my entourage, can solve the meaning of this dream. Va'ani shamati alecha lemor, tishma chalom liftoroto." And I've heard about you, that they say about you that you can listen to a dream, tishma chalom liftoroto, to solve it, to understand it, to unravel it in some way. There's a recurring theme that Rashi mentions over here on this pasuk, which seems to appear in last week's parsha, a couple of times in this week's parsha, as I said, as a recurring theme in these stories of Yosef, which I think is kind of interesting that I wanted to point to. So Rashi tells us that tishma chalom, this phrase that they said about Yosef, that he could listen to a dream, he could hear a dream, liftoroto, to unravel it, to solve it. So Rashi says, Tishma, that you'll hear the dream, Lashon Havana Veha'azana. It's the language of understanding and of listening. What Rashi is pointing to over here is that, of course, there is two things that we do, that we use the same word for, in both in Hebrew and in English, but which are very different. And that is, we use our ears to hear and to listen. We use our ears to hear the words. Again, that's a physiological undertaking. The ears should work to hear actually the sounds that are coming in and to send those signals to your brain so your brain can understand what you've heard in your ear. But that is not necessarily the same thing as listening. And listening, we use that word in terms of our ears. We listen with our ears, but really listening is something that happens inside of ourselves. It's not a physiological process at all. It's a different kind of endeavor with the use of both our intellect and our emotion. And in English, we do differentiate a little bit between hearing and listening. Hearing is just the actual process of hearing the words. Listening is when you take that to heart. You take those words to heart. It affects you in some way. You develop a deeper understanding of the event or the person or the experience or the book or the movie, whatever it is that you're processing through your ears. You don't only hear it, but you actually listen to it. It affects you in some way, either because it changes you or because you take the surface of whatever it is that's out there and understand something deeper behind it. So what Paro was saying about Yosef over here is that he not only can hear, I get confused by myself. He can not only hear people speak about their dreams and solve it based on the words that they use, but he could really listen. And it was because he could listen, not just hear the words and put them together and come up with a solution, but it's dafka because he listened. In addition to hearing, he listened. He took it to heart. Tishma chalom, lashon havana, and ha'azana. He allowed it to penetrate him, which gave him greater insight, greater understanding, greater depth. And it's because of that skill that he had, not just to hear, but to listen, that he was able to really construct the pitaron, construct the solution or the interpretation of the dreams. We have this, as I said, as a recurring theme. It's not just once, but it occurs later in the parsha. As the brothers start to realize what's going on in terms of all of Yosef's tactics, bringing them down to Mitzrayim, and all of the means which he took to try to get them to his palace, which eventually causes him to reveal himself. But Reuven says to his brothers, I told you, right? Reuven reflects to the brothers that maybe they really did make a mistake way back with Yosef, doing what they did to him. They didn't realize that Yosef was Shomea. He was hearing the words they were saying because the interpreter was amongst them. They didn't realize that he could understand them. So Rashi again points out here, Hem lo yadu ki shomea Yosef, mevin et leshonam, uvefanav hayu medabrim kain. They were talking in front of him. They of course realized they heard their words, but what they didn't understand is that he was shomea their words, that he listened to their words. He had greater understanding, havana, of their words. he not only heard them, but they didn't realize he could listen to them. He could really listen to them and absorb the words. And of course, if you are on the Havdalah Motzei Shabbos, I mentioned this as well to Molly in my speech to her for Bat Mitzvah, but it was in last week's Parsha as well, when Yehuda makes his suggestion not to kill Yosef. In the original part of the story, he says, Luchuvadim karenu la'ishmaelim, v'adenu ati bo. We're going to sell him instead of putting him in the pit, causing him to die, like Reuven had suggested. Let's sell him off. Ki achinu b'sarenu, he's our brother, he's our flesh. Vayishme'u echav. The brothers listen. What does Rashi say? Vayishme'u v'kabilu minei. The Vayishma here doesn't only mean that they heard what he said, but that they accepted what he said. To accept, you need to translate hearing into listening. They really listened to what he said. They accepted it. They had greater insight into the world and their experience with Yosef because of the words that he had said. So you see in all three of these examples, Shomea is used in the Torah not just as a description of the physiological process of hearing words, but of listening in a deeper sense. And something we should all be sensitive and attuned to is our ability not only to hear, but our ability to listen to that which we hear and to do something with it, whether for ourselves or for others. Have a great day, everybody.